Hopefully we're up and moving again. Let's see. And we are. Good, 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 good. You know what? That happens, right? Sometimes you drop out and you come back. So hopefully everything is back up and running. We're going to give it just a second to let everything catch up. Let everything catch up here. That is just something that happens when you're live streaming. Sometimes everything disconnects and then you come back, right? Right. But I've checked everything and we look good once more. Alright, we're going to give it a second. That gives me a chance to have a sip of water. Hopefully everyone is back again. Hopefully. We're just going to give it a moment. We're going to give it a moment, right? Alrighty. So, without any further ado, happy Saturday night, and welcome to your Saturday book night. Alright, so if you're still here after that drop off, just say hello in the chat. I'd really appreciate it, and then we're going to jump right into reading. Alright, we have everyone here. I'm glad. And I have to have a sip before I start because here is your appropriate trigger warning for the night. The Citadeline is intensely more personal of a journey in regards to what happens than the saga of Courtney Rubell. And I don't mean personal in the same way that Courtney was personal. I just mean you're going to see everything from Cole's perspective. And you're going to have a view from his mind. Now, for a lot of Courtney's journey, Courtney was detached when he became an ancient. Cole does not have that same kind of benefit. Welcome to the Citadel. I am just a mortal. No one of great consequence, no one who should have seen what I did. Yet one day, walking through the great forests of New Amsterdam, not far from my home, I found that soon the landscape no longer looked as I knew it to be. The trees grew more and more sinister, the ground became wormy and soft. All around the air took a foul and repulsive odor, but when I turned to go back from where I came, the way behind me was no different from the way ahead. A growing sense of being watched was filling me, and I knew something here was more than just wrong. The world had become vehement, aggressive, but all still was silent and calm. The silence became worse as the sounds of the wood had now disappeared. I could not discern the noise of any living thing other than my own breathing. I felt as if the air itself was pressing down on me. The weight of my own body was growing immense. I had no idea where I had wandered to, how I had never seen this place before. Confusion, fear were ruling my mind. A kind of madness began to consume me as I tried to reorient myself in the forest I thought I knew perfectly. Fumbling my hand in my pocket, I pulled out the small compass I had attached to my house keys. It always seemed to make my hikes seem more valid. But now it would be the only way to find my way back home. Holding it as steady as I could in my shaking hand, I tried to discern the avenues of my egress from this place. Yet the needle just spun about without any real idea where it was going. Now and again it would whip left or right, hold still and straight in some direction, then it would begin to spin about aimlessly again. No single stop of the needle seemed to be the same, though. Madly, I began to run back from where I thought I had come. My pace quickened, but the forest seemed to become more alien, as opposed to less. I swore when I checked my wristwatch the time was not passing at all. The second hand on that villainous clock had slowed to a near stop. It must need a new battery. I swore I changed it recently. Nothing was certain anymore, and I was growing terrified. A soft rustling in the trees, distant. It seemed to be the first sound I had heard in some time, and it brought no relief. It was a sound that seemed to be traveling in the same direction as me. The kind of sound that makes you feel like you're being chased. The kind of sound that makes you not want to turn your head or look backwards. Paranoia. It's creeping into my heart. I could stop this pace I had taken. I couldn't stop it. Yet my heart felt like it would explode if I didn't stop soon. A small, gnarled root in the ground decided for me it was time to stop. All at once my foot caught the nearly invisible thing. I fell with a nasty tumble into the ground. The ground was soft and wet in a way that made my mind conceive of a grave. I was doomed. The trees had grown almost black in bark tone, and the leaves were charred and lifeless. The grass was now non-existent, and all around me was permeable, bug-ridden earth. As soon as I had rolled onto my back to breathe, I saw a pair of almost iridescent green eyes looking down at me from a tree branch. There's no face connected, no anatomy, as I knew a body to be, and it left my blood colder than fresh snow. Death seemed imminent as those disembodied orbs looked into me. Yet the thing did not descend on me like a bird of prey. It merely stared. When I could gather my wits, I stood up slowly. I tried to get my bearings. Every direction I could look to seemed the same as the place I stood. There was no escape from here. Only death and these remote, lifeless dregs. The next steps would be crucial, for I had nothing more than a candy bar in my pocket and a bottle of water on my belt. My compass was useless here, as any sense of direction. However, I knew I wasn't alone. I looked back to those eyes and hoped beyond hope that the life force behind them could help me. Those unnatural eyes were still there, looking into me. Brought a shudder through my spine. Please, do you know where I am, or how I could get back to New Amsterdam? I called out, hoping the thing could speak.
Tut? Lot of lost little Tut.
Not knowing.
Tut need go back. But Back is not for Tut. We are lost forever, Tut. Citadel is our home now. You never go back to Dam Amster. No, no, and no, Tut.
I would have stayed more calm if the thing didn't use my own voice. But all those eyes did was ape my natural voice through some means I could not understand. Please, friend, I need to get back to New Amsterdam. I don't know what your citadel is or why I'm here, but I must get home again, please. I begged it as best as I could, but how does one plead with a set of eyes? I watched the eyes cock to one side and then the other, and then they seemed to leap down in front of me. There was a great thud on the ground as if it had a weight of enormous proportion. Huge prints sunk into the ground like a set of massive dog pads. I grew aware of a foul breath blowing out towards me. Again, the fear grew.
Tut calls friend.
In this place, no one who calls friend. No friend is in Citadel. Only Tut. Unless Tut take us out of Citadel as well, will Tut? It imitated my voice again, but I understood what it wanted. The eyes wanted to be free as well. I will take you if you help me. I just want to go home. And if you'll help me, you could leave this place as well. But please, help me. Before I could say any more, the thing suddenly shook with a violent fury that gave me some worry until I saw what seemed like many tons of mud shaking off its invisible body. In moments, a giant dog-like creature was sitting in front of me. It was larger than the biggest Dane I had ever seen, had a coat of near pure white. Even sitting on its haunches, the head was above my own, those green eyes still clear, but otherwise it suddenly seemed much more bearable to be near. I held out my hand almost instinctively, as I had with hundreds of dogs in my life before. At first, the creature only cocked its head to the side, and then, in a very canine way, it sniffed and licked my hand. Tut is friend. What Tut name? It asked without ever moving its mouth. No doubt the speech was somehow mentally projected. I am Cole. Are you called Tut? Perhaps it was foolishness that caused me to ask, but the question seemed valid. The dog thing seemed to smile the way a dog would, nodded its head in an agreeing manner. We Tut. We Cole. Long way in to go out. None make it except Dargelian and ancients. Tut will go with Cole, though. We make it. The thing spoke of much I didn't understand, but he was my only guide here. When Tut and I had finished speaking, he began to lead me towards a direction which meant no less to my mind than any other. For in truth, every way now looked the same. It was a blind journey for me, and I hoped that the dog was truly my friend here. The feeling like my brain would implode had not left me, but at least I could write it all off. Perhaps I'd gone delirious from lack of water. Maybe I'd laid down on the trails in the forest and fallen asleep. Or maybe I'd managed to go somewhere where nothing was as I knew it to be. Whatever the case was, I just had to get home, and as we went further into the woods, I noticed the feeling of being watched and had returned. I saw Tut's ears moving up and down occasionally. The panic of my desperate situation was becoming unbearable, though as long as I was near Tut, I felt I had some safety. though I doubted how safe I was from him. The darkness began to sink on the world, but my watch still seemed frozen in time. I wondered what the Citadel was, how I ended up here. As far as I could see, there was no citadel of any kind here. Only a great expanse of woods and a horrible, loathsome presences. Yet I wouldn't let it eat me alive. The way home must be somewhere near where Tut was bringing me. Though the doubt that this creature was from the world I knew, no. Tut was something otherworldly. I began to feel a bubble of nausea in my stomach as we passed an area of trees strewn with what I believed were the entrails of a man, the remnants of an old red suit. We passed by countless trees that were decorated with hanging bones and piles of skulls at their bases. The terror was rising in me. I wanted to run again. I might have if Tut hadn't suddenly whispered the word, "Stop." He was crouching down now, and I dropped to the ground as well. Something was nearby, but as I scanned the many piles of bones and large trees, I saw nothing. Then Tut cocked his right ear up and moved his head towards the way. I followed suit. I saw something unspeakable, a creature that was beyond words, save that it had the most subtle relation to a woman's shape. I held a child. Nearby was a young girl in what seemed a fatal sleep. The hag nearby could be midwife or murderer in an instant. The creature was almost impossible to conceive of as a person. Its shape, its structure, the long eerie teeth. My first thought was to save the girl on the ground and run off. But this thing would most likely not allow it. Tot started to crawl slowly along the ground, and I did the same. I reached in my pants. I pulled out a pocket knife I kept with me. As the blade clicked out, Tot seemed to whip his head at me like I had blown a foghorn. Yet as he did, so did the creature. I gave us away too soon. The thing stared at us with a jealous anger. I had no doubt that she wished to protect what was hers. "Mine, Tut. I caught this one. If you seek food, take yours before he escapes." The hag hissed. I was stricken by her words in a way that made me doubt even more what Tut had in mind. Tut not want for that. "Mabby? Need give us mother. Mabby can keep Aby baby. Mother not. Give we mother." Tut gave me some reassurance when he responded, but not much. "She is mine, Tut. I helped nurse her. Now I will feast upon what is mine." When Mabby spoke, I almost threw up at the thought of us as nothing more than food. Yet Tut was already making plans and had leapt at the creature with teeth bared and glistening. Two monsters engaged in battle. As my shock wore off, I ran with my pocket knife to the fallen woman on the ground, gently helping her up. Once she was free, I lifted her up carefully, set her against a tree. Turning around, I saw Mabby running at me with a large blade. Tut was nowhere to be seen. I fell back and swung my knife desperately in front of my body. The creature ducked in and out of my slashing and tried to get her blade to me. However, it did not last long. Tut leapt from somewhere above and pinned the creature to the ground, tearing into her in ways I did not wish to see. I turned my gaze back to the girl on the ground. She couldn't be more than a teenager. There was no way I would let her end here if I could stop it. I took off my overshirt, leaving myself in just a tank top and jeans. A careful set of motions, and I wrapped her in the shirt like a blanket. The girl needed medical care badly. When Tut had finished with Mabby, he came over to me and urged along our departure. Not wanting to argue, I lifted the girl and we continued walking. The beast next to me had given good proof of his intentions. I did not fear that he would consume us as Mabby would have, though the place he called the Citadel was not a wholesome place. Tut must have done something terrible to end up here. Perhaps I had wandered into hell, or the true-to-life counterpart of that mythical realm. I shuddered to think what might come next. The bones began to grow thicker along what must have been the sides of a common path. Some of the remains could not be correlated by my intellect to any known of anatomy or creature. Some were so large that they could not even be remotely humanoid or earthly. Occasionally I saw what looked like a large lightning bug fly by the path. I wondered why they were only in the darker sections of wood and not near the borders. The more I watched the bugs, the more I realized that that is not what they were. They were small, vicious-looking things with the semblance of biped figures. Glowing moth-like wings fluttered sickly behind those fang-disturbing creatures. I dare not call them pixies, for they had no relation to any pixie I'd ever seen in illustrations. Once I saw a mound of them devouring a small animal in a way that seemed feral beyond note. Obviously they were scavengers, so the lack of dead things near the border would make it unappealing to them. The girl in my arms had not yet woken, but I knew she was alive by her breathing. Tut and I said little as we walked, but I think that was out of a need for safety more than any lack of things to say. More than once I thought I saw wolves running in the forest, but since Tut did not worry, neither did I. Our journey finally brought us to a place that broke off from the endless forest landscape. A giant set of cobblestones were set in the ground ahead of us, a road. Even though the trees were still on either side, the road made this place more hospitable to me. The bones were now less common, but the darkness had not abated. I wondered if this place was always so empty. However, it might just be the presence of my guardian dog that kept the others at bay. All in all, the horror of this place failed to cease. The nausea still clung to me. Death would not take me here, though. I would get home. When we reached a giant ring of standing stones, Tut laid down on the ground and bade me to do the same. He said the ring was sacred and no one would hurt us here. I put the girl down, laid myself next to her. I felt her safety was more secure if she was close by my side. Tut did not sleep as far as I knew, but I drifted into a peaceful rest. The fact that I slept here removed the safety net of believing I might be dreaming, which left me less content than I would like, and more apprehensive than was good for my mind. When I woke, the girl was still in a state of half-conscious weakness. Tut was still perked, his ears listening to all and keeping us safe. The fact that his guard never fell brought some questions about how sacred this space really was. Again, we stood. I drank a small bit of water and let the hunger in me sit. If the girl woke, she'd probably need the food more than I did. Passing the stones, we kept the road, and I saw a giant tower begin to grow in the distance. It was an odd thing of solid, white stone. The architecture was unique, being similar to a series of stacked pyramids, some pointing upward, some pointing downward. They were overlaid so that the tower had a sturdy frame and a solid construction, but it was all together, unlike anything I had ever seen before. On top was an inverted pyramid with the flat side serving as a roof. The edges of the roof were crowned with giant curved claw-like spikes that made the top seem like a devilish mouth opening up to the sky. It was so far away, but it still seemed to tower high into the sky. This must be the actual citadel inside the land called the Citadel. Tut was still very much on guard here, and now seemed more alert. Flitting shapes seemed to be drifting in flight high in the air, and it was for no sane person to describe or try to understand what they looked like. Far in the distance now, the massive forest seemed to encircle the tower like a wide halo. In the skyline, I could see what looked like unparalleled mountain ranges. To the left of where we were, it was so far off, yet large enough to be visible, despite the massive forest that was still between us and those mountains. This place called a dread up from my soul. This world is more a hell than any man could imagine, up for his pale faiths. Though I was fortunate enough to be spared the worst sights so far, Tut was leading us down the road, and the road seemed to lead to the tower. "What is that?" I asked, motioning to the distant behemoth. Tut, Citadel is here. Place where elders put worse things. Prison. Doorway. Monsters is there that make monsters afraid. Demons die, pray not to be sent there. We must take gate in her mouth. We will wander not long. Again he spoke in a way I couldn't altogether follow. It made my heart sink. The girl in my arms seemed to stir briefly and then sink back into unconsciousness. This place would be a good area to not ever get stuck in, but we were not lucky enough to avoid the fates. Tut pressed on, and I maintained his fast pace as best as my legs could manage. Eventually, we came to a place where the cobblestone road separated, formed a large circle around the outer rim of lands surrounding the tower. Sitting right in the middle of our path was what could only be called a naked man. Though I call him a man, he was certainly not. Or at least nothing like living men. His head was completely bald, save for a bit of hair above the ears. He lacked any facial hair. There were no eyebrows to be spoken of either. In his left hand he held a piece of sharpened flint that served as a stomach-turning tool. For that piece of flint was being dragged through him. A pile of remnants were next to him. The creature had formed such surgical imprecision on its right leg, and now there was nothing but bone. The left leg was atrophied, but not yet scraped of its covering. The thing in the road seemed starved beyond the borders of acceptable undernourishment. When it looked up at us, I saw that one eye was missing. All that remained was a socket. The lips had signs of once being sewn closed. But now the thread was cut so it could move its jaw freely. All the teeth had been battered down. In the skin of its chest was a series of odd runes that seemed burned into its skin. I could not make their origin.
The dog leads the fool off the cliff, does he?
The sound from its mouth was like liquid gargling more than vocalization.
Tut tut.
Does magician make way known? Will we walk white way? Tell, Tut, tell, where is safe, and where is we go to? Or will magician hide what emperor made to know? Tut never made sense to me, but he seemed clearer to this thing.
So you want me to read your cards? I only deal if you pay.
The thing gurgled as it placed the flint down and pulled an oddly long deck of cards out from some unseen place. I recognized the cards as being like tarot, but I always thought they were bullshit before now.
Pay.
What do we pay with, magician? I tried to seem steady when I asked.
Mortal man, I see. You can pay me with something nice. Perhaps that watch you wear. It is solid, earthly goods. What do you need time for in this place anyway? It shall not pass for you here.
The dire magician made his demand in a polite tone, but I knew that he was only masking his desire. Why he should want my watch I did not know, but it seemed a fair price for information. Setting the girl down for a moment, I unsnapped the metal band and placed it on the ground in front of him. He stared at it and then up at us.
Now I draw the cards. You'll see the way to go, fool, princess and devil.
Though his references to us were odd to me, I just nodded. He began to shuffle the cards with one hand, as some men can do with two. At times his single limb was more dexterous than the whole stage of illusionists I'd seen in my life. When he'd finished shuffling, he drew the cards slowly, placing them in a pattern that made me think of a cross. I don't know what any of the cards were or what they meant, but the magician knew. In a few minutes he had seemed to divine something from the cards. His eye lit up. Tut seemed anxious.
What Tut say?
We show, magician. Yes, yes, Tut, Tut. The dog seemed nervous.
Come, young devil. The fool can take you from here just as you can lead him out, yet the princess will never make it to the living realm. She must be left with someone who can stop the death that never ends us. Beyond the citadel you will go, but first you must walk the deep stairs into oblivion and chaos, where the void still nips at existence. When you reach the final hall inside the deep, you can pass the veiled gate to face him, the one who carried the book of lies that binds us to this place. He alone can allow you to pass limbo into the web. From there you must trek across many long legs. No mortal man can finish the journey. But you can if you are determined to. Price must be paid and a toll is to be given. Yet do not expect the ferryman to take you down the eldest flowing river to home, for he will be nowhere in sight. It is only by your own feet that you can reach home. Seek Karn in the land of Cayman. He can take you through the underworld to where the Wraithlands connect the hidden river called Styx. There is another who can take you by boat down that Damon flow that alone will bring you back to New Amsterdam. Fool. Yet if either of you does work against the other, you both shall fall, and when you fall, you will never return from the pit you descend into. So says my cards. When the magician finished, he quickly flipped the deck back into a neat pile with a single broad motion of the hand. Taking up my watch, he slid it onto his only good wrist and snapped it closed with his teeth. I was quite lost, but Tut seemed more afraid than seemed possible. The dog shuddered, looked into the dirt.
What is it?
Tower is where we go. Her mouth we must enter deep. Tut, go into place monsters fear, demons dread. Go into destruction, yes. Tut, we go to bad place, we cold, we scared. Tut showed genuine fright and sadness. You will be all right, Tut. You heard the magician, we can make it. I tried to reassure him, and in truth, I tried to reassure myself as well. Best go now, fool. I hear the worms. The magician offered his last words. I looked down to see what looked like spiked worms. They were moving towards the girl with ferocious hunger. I scooped her up and ripped several off her. In the process, I tore open my hand in several spots. Soon, the ghastly things were squirming out of every crack in the cobblestone around us. The magician did not seem to fear them, and they paid him no mind. Yet the worms were working their slimy bodies toward my blood on the ground, towards the girl in my arms. Tut batted several hundred away before we could begin to run towards the tower. The structure, called the Citadel, was our goal. I saw no entrance or stairs. Everywhere I looked, the earth moved like waves in a pond. The worms were sliding out of every patch of dirt by the thousands. Tut tried his best to knock the path free of slithering beastettes, but could only slow the waves of mouths. Soon it was a race to keep ahead of this death, this exhaustion. Massive tower looming mockingly, with neither stairs nor good points of entrance. As I slowed near its walls, Tut grabbed my belt in his mouth. I screamed as the dog began to run towards the building. The girl and I were dangling from his mouth, with no support save the teeth of an otherworldly being. With a jolt, he leapt up and began a frightful jog. We were catapulted from one ledge to the next as Tut made a mad path up the tower. He almost slipped several times, but always seemed able to defy natural laws in ways I couldn't comprehend. More than once we were traveling along the walls as if they were level ground, but behind us the worms seemed to rise steadily like an ocean of gluttony. Millions upon millions of worms beyond calculation rose up through the ground, a mewling, wriggling mass. Then my mind froze as the surface of the ocean began to ripple from what must have been some far greater mass. Tut sped up as best he could, but I think he heard what I was seeing. Faster than lightning, a shape shot out of the warm sea past where we were. It was grimy, membranous. Every inch oozed with ichor. The creature stopped just shy of twice the height of the tower, and its massive tubular body shivered as uncountable smaller worms fell from its skin. The thing was striated with gargantuan spikes that could have been compared to teeth of more than 8 meters in length, though it was more or less without a definite head.
There was a mouth on the end of its worm-like form. The chasm that now was leaned down to aim at us could be nothing less than a mouth. There were hundreds of rows and teeth inside the maw that seemed like saw blades. They spiraled quickly inward and covered every angle of the hole that must be used to consume. This massive worm intended to devour us and shot towards our path in an effort to make Tut leap into the hole. The dog was clever, though, and quickly darted to the side, out of the way before we could be eaten. Only seconds from death, Tut brought us over the final edge, onto the roof of the tower. Yet the giant trap door to enter the building was closed, and we were forced to stop running and try to open it. I struggled to open the door. Tut kept on guard. The giant worm had not given up a fresh meal. It was merely circling the tower, seeking the clearest path, fattening its belly. Slowly, the massive thing lifted up until it dangled above the upper curve over the top of the tower. It crackled as the maw began to stretch open in the way a snake's might. The creature intended to swallow the whole tower, if that is what it took to consume us. Tut barked in a very canine way, growled fiercely. The girl twitched in her own sleeping nightmare. I wished she would not stir now as the worm began to move down to finish its mission. The trap door finally popped open. I ushered Tut down with the girl in his mouth. The last thing I saw as I slammed the door shut was the throat of the beast suckling down onto the tower's top. Yet, when the door slammed, the danger was gone. Or at least the danger of the massive worm. We now sat at the top of a huge set of stairs leading to a top-floor room. Light was minimal, but there was no sound anymore. I hoped we were safe. After a few minutes, we descended the steps to the immediate floor below us. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for joining tonight for this Saturday book night. And I do hope that you're enjoying Without the Light Volume 1. We are currently halfway through the book on chapter known as the Citadeline. And it's actually one of the longer chapters in this book, so we're going to be here for a little bit. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of adventure. For anyone who might be joining us now, I'm going to be including a link in the chat or in the comments, depending on where you're joining us, where you can get a copy of Without the Light Volume 1, Penance and Toil. And if you get a copy, please share it, leave a review. It would mean the world. Those reviews make all the difference. Have another sip of water. And I hope you liked tonight's lighting, tonight's setup. I do my best to make these experiences good for all of you. Enjoyable for me. I mean, it's a group experience. And part of that group experience is also all the little things, right? That's an important point of this, is all the little things. See a little flash there for a moment, but I was making sure that the captions are still working. It appears that they are from what I can see. So, we're in a good position. Or at least I think we are. Accidentally knocked the light. Alright, we are going to continue on. Thank you for being here. Let's keep going for a little bit. Without the Light, Volume 1, Penance and Toil, the chapter, the Citadeline. Fortunately, that is spelled in the description and the title of this video, but the Citadeline is, I don't know, it's a lot of fun. I have a lot I can say. I'm not going to talk about it right now. But if anyone would ever like to just have one of these live streams where we just have a chat in regards to the books, in regards to everything that we do here, I would love to have one of these streams where we talk about like the mythology, the meanings, or anything else. Please let me know if that sounds like something interesting. But let's continue on with the Citadeline. In a few minutes, we descended the steps to the immediate floor below us. On the wall, a Titan-sized door arch was carved but open to nowhere. It was simple, a slight alcove, but the runes along its sides told that it was something mystical. Tut seemed sad when he searched it and found that the magic was not working right now. Tut knows. Not for us, this ore door. Must we go all the way down? Tut whimpered. That's what the magician said, friend. Down is evil, Tut. We should go another way, Tut, but magician did say we go down. He agreed in a melancholy way. There was an opening in the floor leading to a staircase spiraling into blackness. The dog lifted the girl in his mouth, and we began to walk downward into the abyss. I fumbled in my pocket and took out my house keys. On the keychain was a small pocket flashlight that I used to give some vision in the dark. Tut and I walked beside one another in an equal amount of terror, but he seemed to be no more aware of what we might see here. The stairs dropped into the deep until we came to yet another floor. Here, several small iron oil lanterns gave some light. A second arched door mocked us with its empty alcove, though the feeling that we were not alone suddenly became clear. Something moved as a shadow along the wall, blotting out the light here and there, and Tut growled in many directions with no sense of where it was. Then the voice came, a steady kind of winding, windy howling. Well, what is this? 3 vagrants have come to the citadel. It was a cold and sinister tone with no distinct corner of origin. We are heading to the tower's deepest floor. Please let us pass by. The lights flickered for a moment, and I felt a breeze pass amongst my hair. So you seek death. I can give you that now if you want it so badly, or perhaps you seek to know, but do not be too curious. This is where they put us to be forgotten. Knowing too much will leave you very sad. The voice was mild, even if housed in a wind. Tut moved closer to me, and I reached for my pocket knife again. The girl was placed on the ground, and Tut bared his teeth. Oh, you try to ready for battle. You will die. This is certain.
But perhaps I will let you pass, fools, if you can tell me something.
Tut?
Tut what? Wind thing must sing. Tell we what we want to know.
Tut responded without need of ceremony. Tell me my sin, and I will let you pass. I will give you a hint. My name was Holoman of the Idarish. Now what was my sin? There was a devious glee there.
Tut, we ask such things. Sin was determined by elders, not we. We Holoman. We sin. We made elders angry, rise by not taking bad gifts of rings. We Logiandra. We Holoman. It was by the able think Holoman not follow Logiandra to servitude.
We sin is choice.
Tut answered in a knowing way. The lights flickered again as the thing mulled over the odd manner in which Tut spoke. Holoman suddenly let forth a laugh. The light grew bright. The presence was gone now, and I wondered what was so funny. What the hell was that about? The dog just cocked his head and gave me a motion. I aligned with the equivalent to a human shrug. The next entrance to the spiraling stairs was now in view, and we continued on our way. A flutter of the glowing moth fairies passed us by and seemed to be carrying small bits of flesh and bone. As we went deeper into the tower, a rumbling sound became apparent. The dog to my side almost was shivering. When we went deeper, the light of a giant fire became clear. Several lengths below us was a massive grill. On a spit above it were humanoid things. They were bound up, others chained. On all sides of the fire were large boiling pots with barred lids. I swallowed a scream. On the walls of the chamber hung many creatures, both upper and lower life forms. All too many of those gagged mouths, crying, struggling. A man was sitting on a stone table. I wish not to describe more. A huge carving knife still stuck in the surface beside him. Then the chef, master of this hell, came into view, strutting regal with audacity. He tapped the back of a massive hatchet on his shoulder. His body clothed in linen, scarlet, leather. The apron he wore, littered with pockets, loops of cloth, held uncountable tools, saws. Some of the tools that were visible made me think of a doctor. Others were reminiscent of the very things a chef would keep at his disposal. The creature was thick, burly, a strong body in its robes. The skin was tight, lifeless, gray, eyes of hellfire. Black hair, properly placed, face free of any stubble. Large steel riveted leather gloves were wrapped around huge hands.
The tips were clipped off the fingers to allow long steely claws room to breathe. The grotesque master walked along the wall, seeking supple supply to add to his menu. I could neither move nor gather strength to run. Here actually seems like a decent place to end. Not just for the opportunity to leave you with a cliffhanger, but for the opportunity to talk about the Citadel. First off, I hope that you are enjoying tonight's reading. Second, I truly do hope that you get a copy of Without the Light. Granted, this is dark fiction, dark fantasy, and given there are many intense scenes, but at its heart, Without the Light is a study of a number of things. It's a study of justice and injustice. There's a great deal of subtle and sometimes not so subtle commentary on ideas related to trans individuals and the experiences they have in life. There is distinct discrimination. There is outdated ways of thinking. Without the Light also examines substance abuse and ideas of self-harm. To say that this story and the books all related to it have deep meaning to me, I guess that's almost not a strong enough way to say it. The Citadeline is a very long chapter, and in truth, with the time that we have during these live streams, I cannot finish it. But I can begin it. Pardon me. I can begin it and let you begin to see and understand the Citadel. And the Citadel is supposed to be an unpleasant place, but it's also a mirror. And that mirror can be reflected in many ways. That mirror shines not just on ourselves, but on our preconceptions. That mirror is a surface by which we can gaze what is or is not potentially wrong. And I'm going to talk for a moment about Holloman. Now I grant you, we see Holloman very briefly, and the only true interaction with Holloman is between Cole and Tut and this windy voice, where we never get to see Holloman other than as a shadow moving by. But let's go to Tut's words and Holloman's question. Holloman asks if they can tell him his sin. Tut's final response is that Holloman's sin is choice. And though this is very vague in many ways, it's also very reflective of the way we view certain things in life and in society. Now, without giving anything away or without having to give any additional context, if we just rely upon what Tut said and how Holloman reacted. Tut rejected the gifts of the elders. In this case, in the statement, he rejected the rings. As I establish in the first half of the book, those rings are given to ancients. Ancients are servants of the elders. Elders rule over the great web, or the universe. And if Holloman's only sin is to reject being a servant, was his choice wrong? And this is it's not a simple question. It's not a simple question that has a concise answer. It's not neat. It's not tidy. If we are to accept what we are given in the first half of the book, that the elders rule over the universe, that they are semi-divine, that they create everything, is Holloman's rejection of them, rejection of being their servant, not too dissimilar from when, say, we grow up in, say, a faith. If you grow up being raised in a certain church or a certain faith, and then you reject that later, have you actually done something wrong? And this is, I guess, my question I propose to the reader at this point in time. I mean, we're halfway through the book. You've already seen the Great Web. You've already met the elders at this point in time. You've already seen everything that's going on. And as is established early on in the first half of the book, the Citadel is a terrible place for terrible things. But now we get to see the Citadel, what it really is. Holloman was put there as some sort of punishment. And he's being punished for not choosing to serve what would equate to the gods of this universe. And that's kind of my moral, ethical, and justice question here. It's a social question. It's a personal question. It's observational, but it is related to also the way that I grew up. Fun fact, when I was a kid, I went to church on Sundays. I did Sunday school, that kind of stuff. And that is not a part of my life anymore. But there is a group of people who live that life that think that rejection, or leaving that, is sinful. And thus a portion of my considerations for this question, and also this framing, Holloman's sin was choice. That's what Tut says. Holloman, of course, saying that, if they can guess his sin, they can go by, simply laughs and leaves and lets them continue. There are many layers here. There are many questions. There's a lot to consider. But nonetheless, I propose many thoughts like this throughout Without the Light. I realize we're no longer actually in the book. We're just reflecting back on one of the last scenes that we went over. But it is worth considering. And in truth, I think the majority of Without the Light, if you read it once as a book. Just as a fantasy novel. Read it once through. Then go back and read it again and actually consider the bigger scenes that occur in it and the interactions, and consider what they might mean. I want Without the Light to be something that you can interpret and dissect and take in many ways. I also would like to state that I don't want to delegitimize that line of thought in regards to, say, if you grew up in a particular faith, rejection of that could be conceived of as sin. I don't want to delegitimize that at all. But I do want to bring it to bear and bring it to the light to question and to think about. So, now I am going to share one more time a link for where you can get a copy of Without the Light Volume 1. It's available on Amazon, it's available through Barnes & Noble, it's available through Parnassus Books, it's available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. And please, oh please, oh please, if you get a copy, leave a review. And one of the biggest reasons to leave a review is it actually helps other readers find the book. One of the ways that the algorithms at play work in regards to how it recommends and how it actually shows literary works when you search online, one of those factors actually is reviews. So a part of that is how many people have purchased a copy. Another big part of it is how many people have responded, reviewed, mentioned, etc. the book. And in that end, let me just say that your reviews matter more than almost any critic who could potentially leave a review. I mean, let's not be silly. If someone on a big news website or some newspaper or magazine critic reviews something, it's going to help it a great deal. But when it comes to actually looking for things to read online, your reviews, your thoughts, and your reactions matter just as much, if not oftentimes more. So if you've bought any books on any platform, Amazon, Audible, you can get it through the Barnes & Noble website, please make sure you're leaving reviews for those authors, because they truly make all the difference in new readers being able to find that work and actually know what it's about and whether or not they're going to like it. Good reviews, bad reviews, everywhere in between, it all is important, and it makes all the difference. I'd like to thank you so much tonight for being here for this reading of Without the Light, Volume 1. We will get back to this in the future. Might be a couple of weeks, but hard to say right now at this point in time. Regardless, you can visit my YouTube channel also at Your Saturday Night, and you can watch the previous read-throughs and catch up to now, which would be awesome. And if you do, please like, subscribe, share. And if you're joining me on Twitch, please follow or subscribe or both. But I'd like to thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, be excellent, and I'll see you all again very soon. All right? Good night, everybody.